So officially, we do not have a chair or vice chair yet. Per the resolution, has to be appointed by the council. So the two members from the council, Council President Lima and Councilman LeBlanc, are the two members representing the council, and the chairmanship and vice chair has to come from that. So we did not do that at the last meeting, so we're going to do that on the 14th. So we're going to do that on the 14th. We're going to, the council will appoint the chair and vice chair for this committee.
If we want to be creative with roll call, maybe have people go around and introduce themselves, and then Annie, you can mark roll call that way. That might be the best way. So I'm assuming Jillian. All right, go ahead.
Jillian Weinmiller on Western Coventry's Fire District.
Bob Savetti, Finance Director, Town of Coventry.
Rick Heiss, Chief of Police, Coventry.
Stephen Angel, Town Solicitor.
Dan Perillo, Town Manager.
Peter Rondo, Executive Board Chairman, Hopkins Hill Fire District.
Hillary Lima, Council President.
James LeBlanc, Councilman for District 3.
Brian Teston, Anthony, Fire District.
Kevin McCann, Coventry Local 3372, present.
Dan McAloon, Coventry Local, Hopkins Hill, 4824, Union President.
Russ McGilvery, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Central Coventry Fire District Board.
Fire exits are all the back doors. There's emergency. On the agenda, I have put the schedule together. Now, obviously, with 12 people on the board, it's very difficult. With 12 people on a board, it's very difficult to get attendance from everyone. So I'm hoping we wanted to have set dates so people can kind of plan. So these are the dates that we've come up with based on kind of the roll call that I took with everyone as to what works best. If there is a particular date that a majority cannot come, obviously it's subject to change. But for the most part, these are the dates that we've set from now until July 22nd, when the final report is due to the council on all of our findings. So that is the schedule that's been put together based on the results of the survey roll call that I took. Any questions on that?
So I think we just want to request of the committee, please communicate when you cannot attend, because if we find that we don't have a quorum to meet, then we can let people know in advance. So we don't have everybody come in here and waste time. So.
Mm-hmm. And the second document that I've put as part of this package kind of just breaks down what the council resolution depicts as topics that are important that we cover over the next 6 months. And what I tried to do, which is subject to change, is break down each of those items. I think there's a total of 13 or 14. Those items that the council feels need to be addressed when it comes to looking into how we go about creating a municipal fire department, whether it's feasible and everything that's part of that. So basically, it's each particular subject matter. I've put members assigned to that particular topic because I think those are the people that would have that information, whether it's property, whether it's equipment, leadership structure, all the different categories that I put in there. There may be more people that have information on that obviously, we're not trying to isolate people in particular categories. Everyone has a say in the matter. Everyone can have their input. I know Russ is very experienced in this whole entire process, so he may be involved in every one of these different categories. But again, this is just my attempt to bring a little bit of structure to the commission and identify the areas that we feel, the town feels has to be addressed if this is going to be contemplated after July 22nd when this commission expires. So with that, I'll open it to any questions or comments that anyone has. Solicitor Angel?
Just a question. If the union folks could get me a copy of the contract that you guys have right now, I'll give you my email afterwards. And that way I can begin to, look at some things and kind of grid some things out. Thank you.
If we could just go kind of like deliverable by deliverable and maybe flesh out kind of what information we're looking for, clarify what the term due by that date means, maybe. Are we saying that we're going to have all that information complete, or that the information should be turned into the clerk for it to be included in the agenda for discussion? I think we should flesh out expectations there. So that way those folks who are listed as the members to be affiliated with that know what their charge is. I think that might be helpful. So like the acquisition inventory of district property, real estate specifically, or, capital assets. I don't know if that's or if that's the next one. What kind of documentation are we looking for those folks to bring to the table for that next meeting, and then so on and so forth. Like table of organization and leadership structure. Is that something that we're gonna bring together all districts' leadership structures and decide what a singular one would look like? Like, I think I think that's a worthwhile exercise to go through that briefly, at least for the first couple of meetings here. I don't know what anyone else feels there.
I actually had the same question, but what I would think would be helpful, specifically as I was looking at the first two, is maybe a template so that you get the information in the same format from each of the people that's submitting it.
Yeah, and I'll look to the districts on that, on what that template maybe should have for fields, and particularly with around real estate. Like, what do you think that those fields should be? I'm open to hearing that.
I've done some of the homework and I've got the stuff off the tax assessor's site for the town, for each of the 5 districts reported taxable property. But I don't know what other information you're gonna need, because mortgages, like what's the debt on the properties? Is there I don't know how in depth are you looking? Are you just looking to see what they own? Or do you want a evaluation of the properties?
Yeah, I'm open to that discussion.
I think as much information as you can provide.
We-
Obviously, debt service is a huge determining factor as to how this is going to work. So I would say whatever information you have, whether it's owned outright by the district or there is some type of debt due, I think all that information is relevant.
It might make sense in that case to bring in the building and asset management piece, the condition, what's been the capital plan for these facilities. That might make sense to go in that real estate section.
That was one of the biggest things we did in East Greenwich. We actually had the facilities manager for the town come down and tell you what his evaluation of the building was as compared to ours. What he foresaw is, when are they gonna replace the roofs? When do you think you need to do windows? When how structurally sound is the building? How old is the building? To give you a report in your interest, not from my skewed view, so to speak.
And I think too, Manager Perillo, if we could try and get everybody to submit their capital plans in a format like how we see it with the town, where it highlights the urgency We're back.
All right. So a question for the solicitor regarding deliverables. So do they have to be part of the packet each week, whatever's brought in, or can they bring it to the meeting?
I would just reference it in the agenda.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there are a lot of meetings and there's a lot of documents. So to get in a rhythm of posting stuff, and you can post it afterwards, but just reference what you're going to talk about. I think that's more than adequate. You're asking folks to pull together a lot of information, and it can be posted subsequent.
For policies, codes, and ordinances, I would imagine we wouldn't try to reinvent the wheel too much and would maybe look to other municipalities to kind of gauge, what we could replicate and then tailor to us, if that makes sense to folks.
If I can, I have no problem looking at something that's been done somewhere else, as long as it's been done properly.
Mm,
There's a lot of things, and people just like to copy things today and cut and paste, and you see a lot of junk. So tonight, for example, Russ handed me the legislation that was done at the state level back in 2013 for East Greenwich, which makes a lot of sense. But I don't know what's changed in the laws since 2013 that may impact that. So we're going to look at everything. We just want to get it right for Coventry so that when you guys do it, if you do it, it's right. We'll get it right. Don't worry about us. We'll keep up.
I think, Bob, from your part, if, for that April 10th deliverable, maybe just even a one-page memo talking to Kerry about what would it mean for her to absorb that tax collection, into the department that pre-exists with the town, what that would require. I think operationally, we need to know what that looks like.
I mean, is this basically going to be the same building system, just with the fire districts added to it, right? I mean, manpower wise, you probably wouldn't need more staffing, I wouldn't think.
Correct. That would be my position. I think at that point, we're just, you're adjusting the tax rate to cover an additional liability or additional operating expense on an annual basis. So there shouldn't be any additional staffing needs at town hall. We're still sending out the same number of tax bills, right? Because you're dealing with each district, they're currently getting a tax bill
Mhm.
from, well, the residents of those districts, I should say, are currently getting tax bills. So it's just one tax bill going out versus every household getting two tax bills.
Yeah.
So
But-
from that aspect, I don't see any additional staffing needs, any additional workload here at town hall. It's really, the whole focus is going to be, from a budgetary standpoint. Once we come down to it, what's the budget impact? What's the additional obligations? Obviously I envision, there to be some savings from obviously eliminating the districts or bringing them into the town. You're going to have some savings, but there may be some additional costs to get you properly up to staff to ensure the public safety for the
Yeah.
residents of the town.
I still think we should draft a memo though,
Yeah, I
because
can do it.
I think the best path forward here, so it doesn't feel so daunting come July when we deliver this to the council. This should feel like a progressive paper, right? Like every step of the way, we're developing the results or kind of the outline of how we anticipate each of these aspects is going to plug together. So that way, by the end, no one's getting stuck on pulling together the 35, 50-page report or packet that's going to the council. I think we'd want to build this plane over time, and then by the end, you've got the final product instead of building it all at one sitting. And I don't, obviously we'd have to wait till do any official calcs on a potential tax rate until the budget is addressed on June 12th or in June. Is anyone slotted for something they feel like they shouldn't be slotted for, or is there anything that they're not slotted for that they want to be included on? Does anyone have concerns about the pace for deliverables? Or feel like things need more time? Anything we're missing? Obviously, the resolution outlined a specific set, but for those of you who are in it every day.
Just a couple of comments. I don't see it listed as one of the items, but I think we need the most recently issued independent financial statements for all districts. So I think that's going to be necessary. And then when it comes to the number of personnel, number 12, number of personnel currently, and what is projected, as well as the number 13, the draft of the municipal fire budget. I think we need to have a discussion sooner rather than later, is my understanding. It's kind of limited because fire is not part of the town right now, but when you go through the bargaining agreements, I believe there's a paragraph in each one of them that states that if a merger or acquisition was to occur, everything in this contract will survive, except for compensation. I think that can actually increase, but it can't decrease. So that being said, to actually come up with a really good budget, you would have to have a union contract that everybody would agree to. Now, I'm not asking for that because it's not going to happen before June 22nd or whenever that budget's due. But should we collectively agree that we're just going to pick the best of each current collective bargaining agreement when it comes to comp, stipends, benefits? I think that needs to be determined sooner rather than later. Just wanted to call that out.
Is there, do you think it makes sense to put the financials with any of these particular ones? I don't know if you want to, if that makes sense with the debt service, liabilities, third-party contracts, or if there's another place we can make sure we slot that in.
For me, it would make sense to go with the budget. Maybe we just add a comma saying, please provide the financial statements, because you would want the most recently issued ones for that.
Yep. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point about the contracts. I do want to emphasize, though, I've said it so many times, this commission is not doing any collective bargaining. Zero. We are not negotiating contracts. We're putting together a budget, an estimated budget. So I know that having an idea of what a contract would be helps us put together one that's closest to an accurate picture. But I just want to be clear, no one at this table, we're not collective bargaining here.
And I wasn't saying that we were. I would just think that to be as conservative as possible, and since the contracts, if my understanding is correct, actually state that, we would want to be as conservative as possible and pick the best of the best out of all contracts and then create that budget.
Yeah, no, my comment wasn't directed at you. I just have had a lot of people approach me thinking that this commission is gonna negotiate a contract.
Yeah, and I think the challenging part is, I mean, how many positions do we have now? And how many do we need for a full-fledged department? Because right now, each district is only funding what they currently have, not what they potentially need. So whatever that gap is going to fall on the town outside of what's being collected now. So I think, and obviously salary and benefits are 80% of any budget. So that number of staffing is a huge part of the budget. So I think even though we're not negotiating a contract, we need to know the number of people that we plan on employing with those benefits and no extras. Really laying out a table of organization with, again, number of buildings, staffing, all of that is part of it. Even though it's not a contract, it still goes towards what that budget is going to look like. Kev, what are you guys at now, number wise?
Just talking with Danny a second ago. So the total manpower in the town is 50.
50.
That's between the 3 districts. And then, yeah, I think, 4. So we're at 54.
I think we're up to 5 or 6 full timers.
55, 56.
We have per
Right.
diem members as well that
Yeah.
covers.
Yep.
Holes.
The contracts that are on right now, there's, Hopkins Hill has one good till 2026. We're in the negotiation stage right now for the Anthony District, kind of with a tentative agreement. Right now for theirs was due December 31st, so we're overdue a couple of weeks, but we were in talks today. And the central, contract is up at, September 1. Yes, this year.
So right now, Anthony and Central have the same contract. Is that accurate?
All 3 contracts are different, but kind of the same,
Okay.
language.
Okay.
We've tried to go over the last few years of mirroring everybody's contract. So when this happens, because we've been talking about this for 3 or 4 years, is that to try to get everybody up and even. So when it comes into this stage that we're at now, it's just a smoother transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because obviously the challenge is if we have 3 different salaries for a lieutenant, which one are we taking? The one in the middle?
Yeah.
That's the stuff that,
They're not that far off now.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be a smooth transition.
Yeah. Okay.
If I can. So to a couple of points that have been made, that's why I wanted to see all 3 contracts sooner rather than later so that we can begin to homogenize those. But if I remember right under state law, and the fire professionals, I'm sure can correct me better, municipal departments require a certain certification for its firefighters, if I recall. That must be possessed by the existing 54 or 55. So if there are folks among that 54 or 55 who would not be eligible for lack of some certification to serve in a municipal department, we'd need to know that as part of this discussion. That's just.
You're talking firefighter certifications? Yeah. So speaking just on our side, I'd have to, I don't know what Weston, I'm sure you can enlighten everybody with that one, but all the Hopkins Hill, the Central guys and the Anthony guys are all up to certifications, up to paramedic level. Also, which I'm sure even Weston has paramedics out there too.
So I know that the solicitor mentioned regarding the packet and the information before a meeting. I would prefer that for the deliverables we're asking for certain meetings, that they maybe get turned into the clerk or the town manager the Monday before a Thursday meeting. I think it would make it much more productive if members of this committee got a chance to look at what everybody's turning in before we come and sit here to make it worth everybody's while. Otherwise, we're sitting here in silence reading this. So I do think that we should aim for, if you're someone who's listed as responsible for turning in certain information, plan to turn it in the Monday of the week of a meeting, because we have to file by Tuesday evening.
And what's the preferred submission format? Just send it via email?
I would
to
do
the
email. Yep.
Clerk or to the?
I do
group, or-
the clerk and the town manager.
And just ask a quick question, follow up to something Councilman had mentioned, and maybe the members of the union can answer. He'd referenced language in the contract that talks about the contracts have to go and the best of the items. Does that just talk about consolidation? Or, and this probably for the attorney, which I know he hasn't reviewed the contracts yet, but also, you know, you got the consolidation versus those entities becoming dissolved and having a new department form. So I'm not sure that the language in there as it currently exists, if it would even,
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, because we're not really negotiating right now, but I think the languages that are in there just protect those employees that work there. That's really what that language is for.
but did it mention just consolidation or? I
It
don't know,
mentions,
specific language.
and it does mention merger and consolidation in the event of as a town merger. And this has been language in the contracts for years. This is how long this has been talking. Yeah. So, that was added even prior to me, just to protect the language and the employees.
And I also, we're not union, but we also have that in each of our contracts for our full timers as well. So we'll put that out there.
Just to clarify on the table of organization and leadership structure, my expectation for that information is we're gonna see, I want to see apples to apples, your outside treasurers, your legal counsel, your personnel that are in your tax office, your collectors, any of those non-union personnel. I think that's the expectation there to see, and go from there.
So you said in that table of organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that table of organization, leadership
Including-
structure, I'd include non-union in
Yeah,
there too. That's important to see where,
Just to say, there's not a lot of people there.
You there for the fire commission meeting then? Or zoning? Zoning at the annex, the auditorium annex. This one. To Dan and Kevin, did you guys get a chance to read that Dynamics report? Dynamics report? And is there anything in there that you think we could kind of bring forward or something that hopefully was not a total waste of town resources? No, I didn't send it out. I can, sorry. Any opinion on that? Why is Kevin smiling?
Don't let Dan answer this question. I don't believe it was a total waste of time. There was some good references to the amount of manpower required to cover the entire town of Coventry equally. And that was one of the big concerns that we have, is making sure that the town gets covered equally.
I'll get a copy of that to everyone on the board.
We talking about the study that was done?
Yes. Because obviously, I mean, some of the conclusions in there, it gave us some direction, but it didn't give us a clear path. So I think there's ways to use it and things that I don't think are beneficial, like putting a fire station on Hope Furnace Road. That didn't really seem.
well, I
to
think
be-
a study is supposed to say, here's where you stand, here are your options. Yeah, so,
I think that it's just kind of in more general terms. I think it would be helpful if we all sort of agree on, and I don't know where this falls in here, but certainly before you're creating a budget, deciding just like, what does it look like? Is it the same 5 stations that you have today? Is it less than 5 stations? Is 4? Is it 3? Like the report, the study went through, talked about that a little bit.
Mhm.
It also gave you some, I call them heat maps of like, they just took all the calls from a year's worth of data, they put it in this map, and it showed where they were concentrated. So, you know, in theory, that's helpful in terms of saying, well, okay, down the road, if you were going to build new stations, where would you put them? That's helpful for that. But it's also helpful today if you were to look at it and say, okay, right now, today, we're defined by district boundaries. But if you erase those boundaries and you have flexibility in terms of, do you stay with 5 stations or do you move manpower around to get the best mix that you want, and match up with those heat maps and make sure you're putting the people where the calls are,
Yeah.
then, you know,
Mm.
that's a good start before then you say, okay, now that I've got that figured out, now I can build a budget around 4 stations with this many men at each one, right?
Well, we may naturally get there when we're looking at the condition of some of these facilities. Like, for example, Arnold Road, which is a glorified shipping container. We may look at that and say, maybe we consider what the future is for if we need a 4th station or 5th, or, you know what we may naturally get there, but I see your point. So if we look at the calendar in terms of the next meeting, which is the 23rd, the Monday's the holiday. So I guess if folks can get things to the clerk and to Dan, either the 17th or the 21st, because the 21st needs to be filed. That's what would work best.
So in regards to the property, we talked about that one a little bit, said, hey, we have probably the tax assessor's information there has everything you would want to know about that building, other than, do you owe money? Right, so
Mhm.
maybe we add that piece to the equation and then say, here, everyone submit this. And then acquisition of inventory of equipment and apparatus. I mean, there's big ticket items, and then it goes all the way down to like, really, there's got to be a cutoff in terms of like, what do we consider, what do we want to put on that list, right? I think, you know, of course, major, you know, fire trucks and everything, right? But, and, you know, as you go further down, you're going to get to smaller and smaller dollar value items.
I don't think we're talking about toilet paper here.
Yeah, but you know, yeah, but there's the trucks themselves. There's the things that you put on the trucks, right? You know, hey, a Jaws costs a lot of money. Yeah, you should put that on there. And then you've got like, you know, Scott bottles and radios, which are more expensive than you think they are.
Yeah.
And once you get past that, I think you kind of don't want to.
Yeah, if you feel like we don't need to get into the gear but we also need to consider, how often are you updating the gear that you're giving your firefighters? Is that something that we need to really inventory and understand in terms of investment?
I mean, they can talk to it better than I can, but everything that they wear or have has a defined life that it's good for, that it's
Mhm.
certified for, and they often replace it sooner than that. But you know, there are some things that can go to that date and then you're required to replace them.
Yeah.
So they're on different cycles.
Yeah. I'd look to the rest here to say where you think the cutoff should be when we're thinking about going down the line of inventory. What's really going to make the difference when we're looking at the budget picture?
The inventory, especially like turnout gear and things like that, will be based on a station, the amount of turnout gear that we have at the station. And it is true that yes, we do replenish this turnout gear probably every 3 to 5 years, depending on the condition of the gear.
Yeah, so that's something like similar to what we're doing with the town, where we're budgeting a certain amount every year to lessen the spend when it comes time for reevaluation year. We'd want to make sure that we're putting a certain allocation away each year to budget for when that gets rotated through, or we're purchasing new gear for particular stations on a rotating basis. Same like what you do for apparatus, where you're rotating when you need to get a new rescue, a new engine, etc.
And then when it comes to the buildings, I know Russ mentioned about an independent person coming in to evaluate it, but just give us an idea of what kind of shape the building's in. Does it need a new roof? I know Anthony's doing lots of work currently. Is Weston the newest building? Is it in the best shape? And it needs nothing. So whatever your personal assessment is of your facilities, if you can just include that, just to give us an idea as to what, if we do keep all the buildings, what the potential capital outlay may be to make them not the best buildings, but better than they are now.
And there was a section in that study where they came and looked at every building and they assigned it a, quality score or whatever. And yeah. But they went through with some level of detail, how does it look? And granted, that's a little bit dated at this point because we have done some improvements since then, but it's better than nothing.
Anything else before we open up to public comment? Okay.
No, I would just say, from you're talking about the fixed assets, capital assets. I would assume with most of the districts, their financial statements, you have a capital asset policy for your audit where you indicate anything over 10,000. So I would say looking at that as a threshold, but then on the other side, you do also need that inventory of this, what do they call it? Scuba gear, the tanks and all that, because that doesn't generally get capitalized in your audited financial statements because each unit may be 5,000 or 6,000. So it's less than that 10,000 capitalization threshold. So I think if you use that as a tool, saying anything over 10,000, an initial cost, provide that list. So it's going to be, if you have ATV vehicles, some of your boats that you may have, all those things, put that onto one list and then have a separate list where you're talking about the gear and the scuba packs. Some of you may have the large industrial washers and that are significant to wash the gear. So those type of items, just including all that. We don't want anything that's in, just supplies, but your jaws of life, your infrared cameras, all those things.
No, I agree. I think getting down to the nitty gritty of even like ordering a pair of gloves, I think that's probably way down the list. It's more of the capital stuff. A lot of the other stuff that we find, gear wise, comes through usually. Sometimes it does not have to come out of capital budget. Just for instance, we have grants for radios. They're buying new radios from Central right now, and then we have a grant for gear that's covered 100%. So I don't think getting into that far down is probably necessary. I think probably just where the real money's going to go. So.
This might sound obvious, but just want to state it too. I think that Chief Heiss should definitely be party to talk about the organization, leadership structure, policies, codes, ordinances. I know that you guys already work together already, but I think it's important that we kind of cement when all entities are under the municipal corporation, what changes, what stays the same, what's maybe been duplicative. I don't know if there's any duplicative equipment between Coventry Police and Fire, or if we've always just kind of shared, or everybody has what they need for a reason. But I just want to make sure that all of our emergency, you're right, all of our emergency services. I know EMA is into you as well, but I think it sounds obvious, but just wanted to call it out.
If I may, get into the structure like that without diving too much into it. We all kind of operate anyway under what they call one incident command system. That's been established over the years. So we're just taking each individual fire station. We're not really departments with fire stations and just looping them into one command system after that. It's already broken down that far over the years where the structure of the departments have shrank so much. It's really not going to be a hard lift at all. I mean, we probably have it done by Friday. In reality, we've shrunk down all the way around on the whole town that far. So I don't even think that's going to be a heavy lift at all. But at least if you take that system the way it is, that incident command system, it's just a matter of bringing everybody else into operation wise, which we're already there anyway, including the dispatch. So.
Last words. All right, to public comment. Just look it up. Is it on, Cody? You just hit the switch up. There you go.
Scott Guthrie, 31 Maplewood Drive, former state representative, District 28, and District 41 a long time ago. Going back when we had some problems in the fire department, there was a tax error where one building that was supposed to be assessed at $2.8 million was assessed at $28 million, which caused this horrific problem that we ran into with Central Coventry. I'm sure we all remember that. You can't expect to get money that's not going to come in. There was a problem that it took them a couple of years to find out. The General Assembly, when I was in there, we worked kind of hard with, Central Coventry and with the town to figure out what was going on. So back then, I went to every court hearing, sat in front of a judge who had to listen to problem after problem after problem. And his job, as he said, was not to run a fire district. State law at the time said that if one fire district in Coventry fails to serve or goes bankrupt, so they're their own taxing authority. So if they go bankrupt, that means they have to sell everything. So in the Central Coventry situation, they would have had to sell every fire truck, every fire station, every piece of hose, every nozzle, everything. However, in this charter, it says that the town is responsible for public safety, which they are. So there were a lot of battles and a lot of lies and a lot of mistruths that were going on. And my job was to protect the people that I represented. And working through leadership, we kept Central Coventry alive through the Fiscal Stability Act. Had that not happened, the town would have owned every single fire district in this town. Western Coventry, Anthony, Hopkins Hill, all of them. But all of that stuff from Central Coventry would have been sold, gone. You'd have started with nothing. So I did my research back then. Today, I spent another 4 hours in the West Warwick Library, going back to how fire districts really started and what would happen if we would have one fire department in Coventry. So in 1948, it was brought up by Elmer Capwell, who was the chief of Coventry Fire District, which is Anthony. And Anthony, or Coventry Fire District, predates West Warwick Fire Department. And it goes so far, 1889, okay? And before 1889, there was no West Warwick. And it used to be known as the Warwick and Coventry Fire Department. And it's kind of odd, my friend Mark Vincent up at Hopkins Hill ended up getting this old piece of paper from Mrs. Beauchesne, who used to follow history. And I like to follow history. So here we are, wondering what to do with something that has been falling apart for years because of a fiscal mistake that turned into a lie. So I'm going to go back to maybe 2012. I sat in this room with every fire chief, every board of directors of the fire districts, and I handed them every single piece of law that had to deal with what happens if this fails. That's on my shoulders because I'm trying to represent the people that elected. So here it comes again. And I got notice of this in an odd way. This meeting was not properly posted on the Secretary of State's website because it doesn't say Town of Coventry. It says Municipal Fire Commission. So when I went looking and searching this morning, as I was told yesterday, this meeting is going to be tonight. I'm not sure if it's actually legitimate. I'm not trying to fault anybody for this, but for the next posting that you have on this fire commission, you might want to let everybody in Coventry know that this has to deal with the Coventry Fire Department and its future. So I could not find all of the other stuff that I dug up years ago. So today I went and I got 30 more pages of stuff that dates back to 1948. All of the votes that, and all of the thoughts that these other fire chiefs of other fire districts that all started in the 40s after this giant brush fire that we had that almost burned half the town down. So I do have a little bit of knowledge. I started my career in 1974 at Hopkins Hill, rose to the rank of captain. I worked at the Coventry Fire Alarm Headquarters under Stanley Merck for 12 years. I left there, worked for 20 years for the town of North Kingstown. Unfortunately, suffered a spinal injury and had to retire. So what I would like to do is offer my volunteerism to research and give you all of this information to show how the town of West Warwick went through exactly what we're going through right now. They had the River Point Fire Department. They had the Crompton Fire Department. This is not something that hasn't happened before. So if you will, I will ask that copies be made of actual, I like to call it journalism, because it's written down in a newspaper. The Patuxent Valley Daily Times, which turned into the Kent County Daily Times. And it goes back and it talks about how the volunteer fire departments acquired taxing authority. And what they did is they attached themselves to lighting districts. There used to be the Bakerville Lighting District in Anthony. There used to be the Coventry Lighting District in Anthony, Washington Lighting District, Ty Oak Lighting District. So this is how this all started. Back then, in 1948, there may have been maybe 5,000 people that lived in Coventry. We're approaching 40,000 people here in Coventry. And it's time that we address, the services that we have to provide. I saw something said the other day that they responded to like 7,163 calls. Am I close, Deanne? Do that on a daily basis. That's a lot. And with the staffing cuts that happened in Central and the closing of 3 fire stations and the response times getting longer has caused this thing where if you get a house fire now, everybody has to go. They all have to go because there's not enough manpower to do this. You can't work alone. No policeman should work alone. No fireman should work alone. This is how it's supposed to be. I know I can get long-winded at things, but it's important to me. I've lived here for 67 years. I suffered a job-related cancer in 2008. And 2 days before the election that I was unsuccessful in this last time around, I was told it came back. So my passion to make this town's public safety work makes it a little bit more strengthening for me. So I'm very friendly with JP. I talked to him earlier. I think putting all these packages together, you can read actual stuff that happened, not stuff that somebody wrote on the internet, because in 1948, who thought internet was anything? I was on the last charter commission and I chaired it. And there were a couple of things that we brought up. One of them was to ask the voters if they would like to have a municipal fire department. And the reason that we had to do it that way is because that's what it says in the charter. In here, I found that last piece of information that I couldn't find, which was a meeting was to be held on a certain day in 1949. That meeting was held. There's a notice on the Friday that the meeting is going to be held on Friday. And on Tuesday, there was no mention on any vote that had to do anything with creating a townwide fire department. I've also been in the vault trying to find out why this didn't happen. This is years and years of work. So I'll go back and I will pull all the stuff out of West Warwick that I can get. Our library doesn't have the resources that West Warwick has. It's microfiche. It takes hours and hours to read over, but it's factual. It's what's written down and it's what should be understood by everybody and not something that somebody says behind a fake screen name on social media. So I'll offer my volunteerism to either sit with you on the commission or to sit aside from you and provide as much information as I can. So that right now this is 39, I think 29 pages of stuff that's actually a little more than I found the last time. One guy I trust the most is right there. I'm going to ask him to have copies for all of you. Another copy for me. I'll go back and I'll find that other information that I had from the first time. And when I said I sat on the Charter Commission the last time, we made recommendations and we put stuff in packets for the town council members to make decisions on that were taken out of their packets. And I can prove it. And I'm angry about it. One of them was fire department and the other one was mayor. Both of them were non-binding. All it was to ask the people a question. If you want to know what the people want, ask them. Ask them that question. They'll say yes or no. So here we are, relying on outside mutual aid, Western Coventry. I see West Greenwich going into your town more because you're coming to help Central Coventry, Hopkinsville, and Anthony. So this is running as one fire department and has been for a few years. So, like I said, I just want to offer my help. And while I have the time I have left, let's make it work and let's make it work for everybody. And let's all be honest. And one of the funniest things that makes me say that is my daughters gave me for Christmas my crest and my family crest and motto. And that motto is Sto Pro Verite, which stands for the truth. So, like I said, if I can help you, reach out to me. I have all the time in the world. I'll do as much as I can to get as much information to everybody that needs it. But the very first thing I'll recommend is at your next meeting, when you post on the Secretary of State's website, that is the Coventry Municipal Fire Commission. It says Coventry Municipal Fire Commission. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Anyone else in the public want to speak? Just your name and address for the record, sir.
Sure. Kent Novak, 246 Camp Westwood Road, Coventry, Western Coventry Fire District, taxpayer. And just a couple of thoughts. Each district has a yearly audit, and I think they're all up to date. A little different than the town's situation. And I think as far as these audits are concerned with the fire districts, they're important for what they say, and they're also important for what they don't say. And I think some of what they don't say is the proper information on capital assets and so on. I think you touched on that, or somebody did, about what the audit doesn't have in it. And I attended a Western Coventry board meeting the other night, and you all know they have a brand new rescue. And one of the firemen there addressed a concern. They've put the projection is they'll put as many miles on this rescue in 4 years as they did in their old rescue that they replaced in 9 years or something like that. So that addresses a major concern to me, because it took a year and a half to get the rescue. And also they had to borrow $250,000 to finance the rescue. So over a 4-year period, they'll no sooner get done paying this thing off, and what plans are they going to have to make to replace that, in addition to a tanker and whatever else they may need. But so anyway, I'd encourage you all to look at the yearly audits from each fire district, and perhaps an annual meeting report packet that each district must prepare for their annual meetings. I'm only aware of the one that Western Coventry produces. It's quite an extensive document and fairly factual also. The state requires each district to file financials with the state. And I don't know what the office is, if it's the Office of Municipal Finance or the Auditor General or whomever it is. I believe the treasurer has to file these documents quarterly. And I believe, again, that they are up to date. So I think that could be a good source of information. And a concern, I think Jillian over here talked about 4 or 5 full-time members in Western Coventry. It was reported the other night that they now have 40 members of their department. So the majority of them are, per diem members and so on. There's a lot of talent there. And, how are they going to be looked at for a consolidation? That's about all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak?
Hi. You left this on, right? Hello? Okay. Steve Boske, 8 Raven Boulevard, Coventry, Rhode Island also. And Kent was at our meeting the other night. I'm the board chair of the Western Coventry Fire District. And so some of the things I was looking for, talking about the Dynamics survey, they did do the ratings of all the stations, the condition. Most of them are obsolete or have lived through their usefulness. Where stuff should be located. Part of the Dynamics RFP, for some reason, was supposed to be conducted on the possibility of a split department, an east and a west part of the town. And For whatever the reason, that part of the survey wasn't completed. I'd asked them when they had come out if that was going to be in their final study, and it wasn't. The charter, the way it reads, from what I can see, the town council also has that ability. You can have a department that does not fall under the full ridership. You can split it, or however you want to have another company manage it. So I'm just putting that out there. As far as what Ken's saying, that was a concern of mine, is has the board or the committee gave consideration as far as to the debt of some of these districts and how that would be dissolved or taken care of? Is it going to stay within those districts? Are they going to put a lien on the property to make them whole, or is that going to be spread out to districts that had nothing to do with that debt? And that's a big concern of the taxpayers out there. From when they reach out to me, it's like, how would this be paid for? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are a lot of per diems that won't, they may do our jobs part-time because they got other jobs that they do full-time. Some work for other fire departments. So, they will be without work. Jillian said, we do have work agreements with our people. They're 3-year agreements. Most of them have all been signed within the last year. In the case of a takeover, a town takeover, or forced merger, their positions will be held. The other thing, I know there was a committee that was put together by one of the representatives here, not here, but in the town council, informally trying to make a district, single district department. And there were a lot of numbers that had gone over at that time, and the manpower issue and stuff. They were, considerations that weren't quite, I think, making sense at the end when everything was said and done. If this works, it's fantastic. But those were, as far as the debts and the MERS contributions, where would they be coming from? That's really all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public want to speak in chambers? Cody, anyone on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, can you raise your hand if you want to speak? Thank you. Anyone else have anything you want to add before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Have a good night.